Welcome to Conversate, our podcast where we engage in conversation. And on this week's episode, Aaron Gerke and Kevin Bender are engaging in conversation about Ephesians chapter 5 and what that means for the practicality of how we live as the light in this world. We hope you enjoy it. Well, hey, Kevin.
Hey, Pastor Aaron. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.
Drink up.
You know what I noticed?
What's that?
We almost matched today. I mean, at least our pants.
Uh-huh.
And you got like the checkered shirt. Those of you just listening on audio are like, man, I wish I were watching on video.
And what are they wearing?
And those of you watching on video are like, man, I better switch to audio. I can't handle this.
Aaron, you and I have a long history of matching.
We do. I wonder what's behind that. Great wives?
Yeah, it's got to be.
Yeah. I was going to say my wife sets out my clothes for me each night for what I should wear in the morning, but that's not true. That's not true. I am solely responsible for what I wear.
Nice. I will say this about my wardrobe choices. I choose my socks in the dark every morning.
Is that right?
And so I have no idea what they are. And based on their color determines the rest of the outfit.
Well, how do you know what color the rest of the stuff is if you don't know what color the socks are?
Well, I don't get dressed in the dark, so I take all my stuff from the dark room that I wake up in, go across the hallway to the lit up room where the rest of my clothes are. I could store all my clothes in there. I don't know why I haven't done that, but
I don't know.
The surprise.
This sounds like a fun way to get dressed in the morning.
Yeah. You know, you walk in the next room, the darkness is exposed to the light. see what color my socks are.
Oh, man. That is what light does, doesn't it? It exposes the darkness.
It does.
How about that for our transition?
I thought it was pretty smooth.
That was pretty smooth. It wasn't awkward at all. We just
It's
slipped
getting
right.
awkward by the second, though.
The more we talk about our awkward transitions, the more awkward they get. No, hey, so this weekend we're looking at Ephesians chapter 5 at our church. And I mean, people may be listening to this at some point in the future, so it doesn't necessarily have to tie to that. But, we have been working our way through the book of Ephesians in a preaching sermon series. And you just got done preaching on Ephesians chapter 5, which has a variety of different things in it, a whole lot of stuff. And the place that you chose to zero in is in this idea of light and darkness, which, that's an image that's all throughout the Bible. Mm-hmm. It's all throughout film and movies. And I don't know, why do you think it's such a poignant image for, I don't know, good and evil or?
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. It is everywhere. It's pervasive, this image of light and darkness. I'm glad you took it even outside the context of the Bible, because you're right. Movies, books, right? They all draw on that imagery oftentimes, I think, because it's just so prevalent to the everyday, right? You wake up, maybe it's dark, maybe it's light, but that it impacts your day, right? So up here, there's a lot of darkness in the wintertime.
Yes.
But lately, it's been super sunny.
Right.
And that has directly impacted my life over the last few days. You know, when it's sunny out, when I'm in the light, when it's shining on me, my mood's better.
For sure.
You know?
Yeah, and I think I've even heard it said that darkness is really just the absence of light. Sort of like they say that cold is the absence of heat.
Okay, I haven't heard that. That's a UP one.
No, that's physics 101.
Oh, I didn't listen to that.
At least I think it was physics. Maybe I think light is the same sort of branch of science, but I think that's true, that darkness is the absence of light. And I mean, if you think about, I was thinking even in the very beginning of the scriptures that it was darkness. Darkness covered the face of the deep, and God inserted light. You know? So God spoke light into existence.
Day one.
Yeah.
That is cool.
Right. And so we get this Ephesians language about light exposing the darkness. And Paul lists a variety of things, sinful behavior that kind of needs to get exposed, or that we as Christians who are in the light need to flee from. Do you want to just go through that real quickly again? Some of that, maybe some of the stuff that you don't need to re-preach the sermon, but I think it's good to hear again some of that stuff that the Ephesians were dealing with, and some of the things that, I mean, frankly, it's the same stuff we deal with today.
Oh, totally. And I'll make two kind of overarching comments before diving into it. Because Paul, it's subtle in the text. Like when you read this section, it is kind of long and sometimes long-winded when you're dealing with Paul, right? So sometimes these things fly over your head. But Paul makes a couple really big comments in this section about the light and the darkness. So those two comments, I'll just say now, is he's going to make a comment about the condition of humanity, one, and then two, he's going to say, he's going to make a comment about kind of the condition of even sinful activities when a Christ comes to them, when he exposes them. Okay. So he's going to make a big comment about human condition, and then about the kind of the manifestation of that condition as well. Okay. So run through that list for the Ephesians, right? They're living in this huge metropolitan area. I mean, think New York, think Hollywood, think, West Coast, East Coast, massive population, massive influx of culture. So Ephesus was a harbor town. It had one of the 7 wonders of the world, the Temple of Artemis. And so you have all these different ideologies, philosophies, and different people bringing in these different ideas where these Christians are living.
Right.
Okay. So Paul's writing to these Christians in Ephesus, a mixed congregation. Sometimes we dumb it down to Jew and Gentile,
right?
Which is true. I mean, it was a congregation of Jews and Gentiles, but that Gentile term is much more broad than the Jew language, right? So Gentiles, I mean, there's all sorts of people, Phoenicians and I don't know, Italians, Sicilians. I'm just making up words at this point. It was a mix. Well, there's also old and intergenerational congregation.
Right.
Men and women, slaves and free.
Yep.
So all that kind of comes into play. So you get all these different people, and but they're in this church, so they're being guided by a true light, true wisdom, Christ. But each day as they step out into their world, they kind of got to deal with what the rest of the world is saying.
Right.
And this is so when it comes to like worshiping Artemis, right? This is the deity, the Greek goddess Artemis. Where the temple was built for, that Temple of Artemis, that wonder of the world. So you got a huge population. According to one of the contemporaries at the time, Pausanias, this Greek goddess Artemis was the most worshipped goddess in all devotional life in the entire Mediterranean world.
Right.
So, I mean, depending on who you're talking to, they're going to talk as if, hey, like, you've been over the temple lately?
Right,
Are you? Have you done your sacrifices to this god?
Right.
Oh, things aren't like you're not having a success in childbearing. Well, you should probably go over to the Temple of Artemis,
right?
Because she's the goddess of fertility,
right? Well, and if I remember my history correctly, too, in that world as well, like when Paul is talking about not eating food sacrificed to idols, there were big festivals that were held in honor of these gods and goddesses, like offering food sacrificed to them in order to earn their favor and stuff. And so that's, you imagine, it's a huge like cultural thing. So people's family and friends are going to these things. Maybe some people like actually believed in Artemis. Some others, I bet, if it's anything like today, are probably just apathetic and they want to go to the party and have food and
right.
and so the Christians are wondering like, well, all of our friends are there, can we go there and like just hang out and not worship the god? Like it's that practical,
totally.
And so Paul warns them about the dangers of that kind of stuff. And I don't think that was in this section per se, but all of that is on the table for what they're dealing with.
And I think there's some similarity. I'm trying to think where exactly in scripture. It might be in Corinthians that you're drawing from some of those passages, but there's a lot of overlap between the Corinthian world, because that was also harbor town, prosperous, lots of cultural influence. But you're exactly right. So these guys are stepping out. It's kind of like, hey, the world's doing all this stuff. Maybe it's not such a big deal if I do it too. if I, this is where it gets a little complex, right? Because I think there is some truth to that, right? Like if you know what your foundation is, if you know who you're grounded in, that's kind of the whole point. Like then you can go out, you can be around this stuff. It's not like you're become ascetic,
right?
You don't leave civilization to go have your own hideout,
right?
You're in the world, but you can see through kind of the lies, or at least and this was the whole lighthouse talk, right, in the sermon of there's dangers underneath the waters, right? There's rocks, there's reefs in our world. Some of this stuff, it's not like it's inherently evil. Go watch Disney movies. I love Disney movies. Frozen's a great one. Moana. But see, I talked to some kids at the seminary, lived a few houses down, from Africa, and their parents don't let them watch Moana.
Okay.
Or Frozen. I can't remember which one it was actually.
Okay.
But see, they were being thoughtful about that because in their culture, there's a big belief in magic and in ancestral worship, and that's part of that. In Moana, her grandmother passes and it becomes a stingray or something.
I never saw it, Kevin, but you sound like an expert on Disney films.
I will go toe to toe with anyone on some Disney trivia for sure, except my wife. Molly's. I thought I was better at singing all the songs in there. She knows them better than I do.
Is that right?
She got the lyrics down.
Wow.
See, but you can watch this stuff, and it's fine if you kind of are filtering it through the knowledge you have.
Yeah.
Right. But if you're not careful about that, that's where the sweeping language, you can get swept away.
Right.
This is the waves that Paul talks about in chapter 4:14, to and fro, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Did I tell you about the time that I was getting swept out to sea, literally? No?
Tell me
so it was just a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, something like that. We took a family vacation to Southern California, and we were at the beach and in the ocean, and I've swam in the ocean a number of times throughout my life. This wasn't my first time. But I wanted to, the waves are huge, and I wanted to go boogie boarding. So we had these boogie boards.
Oh, yeah.
And so I went out there, and everybody else just wanted to stay on the beach. And so I was just having the time of my life, and I came back in, and then my dad was there. My dad was like, "I'll go boogie boarding with you." And I was like, "All right, let's go back out there." So my dad and I were out, and you don't go out that, you go out kind of far, but not that far. We were only going far enough that like you would get out there, ride a wave, and as soon as that wave broke, like you could touch the ground. Like you're not swimming the whole time. So that was happening, and then I wanted to go a little bit farther out than my dad did. My dad's much shorter than I am, and so I was trying to get out just a little bit farther, and there were people like surfing even way farther out. So I'm thinking I'm not going that far. Anyways, I was looking, and I noticed that my dad was like way down the beach as he was like closer into shore, and as I was getting farther out, like I was going further along the shore as well. And finally, like I tried to ride this one wave, and then the wave broke, and I didn't touch the bottom after that, after I got down. And I was like, oh no, like I'm out pretty deep, So I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, well, logically you got to just catch the next wave and that will push you in. Sure. So instead of, trying to find the bottom with my feet, I just laid on my boogie board, and I got a wave and tried to swim with it. And then I still couldn't touch the bottom. And I was like, that's weird, And there's one of these huge California piers, not that like, maybe it's 100 some yards away. Like, and I noticed that I was like getting closer to it, and I'm like, huh. So then I thought to myself, okay, just lay on the boogie board and eventually the waves will push you in. So I'm laying there, and then all of a sudden I notice that, cause I was just like, just stay calm, man, it'll be fine. And I noticed that there's this lifeguard, this California, like teenage guy, I think, like swimming. And I'm like, oh, I wonder where he's swimming to. And then I look around, and I had this realization, there's nobody around me.
Oh,
it's just
man.
me. And I'm like, he's coming for me. He's coming for me. So he swims right up to me. He's got like that, the red like pull behind thing. And he goes, "How you doing, sir?" And I was like, "I think I'm okay." And he says, "No, you're not. You're caught in the rip current." And I was like, "Oh, okay." He said, no problem. Just lay on your boogie board. I'll swim you into a wave that will take you into shore. And I was like, wow. So this scrawny little guy, he grabs the front of my boogie board, starts swimming. He goes, here you go, hold on. And, hits this big wave. It knocks me in. All of a sudden he pops up right next to me. He goes, all right, we got to do that a couple more times. And he's like swimming me, because you get out of the rip current, you got to go, same way. Anyways, all that happened, and I got back to shore, and I was like, thanks. And he was like, all right, see you, have a good day. And then he goes, hey, notice, do you see these signs on the beach, these flags? That means don't swim out from here, because this is where the rip current is. And I was like, oh, now I see. So, I got back to shore, and I told my family all about this, and they're like, whoa, that's a big deal. I'm like, oh, I guess it was, So long story short, but from my perspective, as you talk about like the gradual, like I think everything's okay. It doesn't really matter if I just drift a little bit, like if I'm not really paying attention to what I'm consuming, what I'm doing, like this whole idea, like all of a sudden you can get swept up in it, tossed to and fro, and not even notice that it's happening to you.
Right.
So
yes.
So that's, I don't know.
That's such a beautiful, powerful, kind of scary in a way, but just such a good image of it. I think that's spot on. Like it's kind of a sinister thing about sin, I suppose. It's enticing in that way. It masks itself. It doesn't seem like it's going to be that bad, or you kind of have this sense of, well, no, I'm still in control. Like, I can get out of this. Yeah. Until you can't.
Right.
And what a beautiful picture of salvation too, right? Then.
I have used it as a sermon image. So some people are listening, like, I've heard the story, but
nice.
No, but for real though, like it's a real thing. Yeah.
Well, and this, lines up perfectly with what, I thought I was quoting Paul in my sermon. Actually, I was quoting Jesus, because he say, flee. He says, flee from sexual immorality in one of the Gospels, right? And I remember hearing that and thinking, well, like, what does that look like to flee, or why would you want to? Then I had this image of like a cliff, right?
Okay.
Because sometimes I think sin's that way too, where it's, once you kind of commit it, once you fall off the other edge, it's like, this was not good.
Yeah.
This hurt.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do that. And so like, if there's a cliff, I'm afraid of heights. I get,
oh really?
I get like a little vertigo, right? So if I'm going to look over a cliff edge, I have to crawl on my belly and just inch my eyes over. And I still feel like I'm going to fall over.
Oh,
like
interesting.
My head's just going to pull me over. So it's like, I would never walk next to a cliff.
Okay.
Right. And I think that's what Jesus is kind of saying, like, stay super far away from it.
Yeah.
It's like those signs on the beach for you.
Right.
Hey, here's where it's at. Watch out.
Yeah, exactly. But we need people in our lives to also be those signs. And you use the image of the lighthouse in your sermon a lot, which is a great image. And you talked about how a lot of times in the olden days, it's the light was the reflection of the fire, and you saw the reflection. And I think that's very true for us. Like what Jesus does say in the Beatitudes, Matthew 5, he does say to the people, you are the light of the world, right? A lot of times we think Jesus is the light of the world, which he is.
Yeah.
But Jesus also says, you are the light of the world.
Right.
So, which is kind of scary, because I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. No, you're the light. Like and Jesus says, no, you be the light of the world, right? Be the light of the world. I think it goes back to the day one of creation, as light is being created, and God, I think it's what's cool about the creation is that God creates light to govern the day, but also light to govern the night as well. So even in the darkness, light still shines. Like the lingering, the stars glow, but the moon is there, casting that reflection onto the earth. And I think that's a great reminder to us too, of who we are, as we have that boldness of the light on us at different times, and then we shine it into the world.
Well, and there's different seasons, like you're saying, like you might go through a season of, hey, this is sunshine, like I'm feeling it. I'm in the spirit. Like I feel like I'm making good decisions, I feel Christ, but maybe go through a season of more darkness where it's like, gosh, I'm just having trouble navigating right now. That doesn't mean the light is gone or extinguished.
Right.
You have, It's just and right now, I think, at least in America, maybe not. I mean, maybe spiritually, maybe not, but it seems like a season of darkness, with just all the difficulty of 2020 and the pandemic and the hostility and the division, so, we pray for the light.
Yeah. But I think what we need to know is that in the midst of what the world says is darkness, the light of Jesus it's always the same. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, he is the light of Jesus is present.
Sun's there even when it's nighttime.
Or when it's cloudy.
Yeah.
I mean, looking outside right now, it's cloudy, but the sun, I mean, it's still there.
Yeah.
Like, may feel shaded, but it's there.
Right.
You know? So even if you can't see it.
And I love the silver linings then too, right?
Yeah.
Like in life, when things are kind of dark and drear and grim, well, there's usually some sort of positive, you know what I mean? And that's that silver lining because the sun is still shining behind it. So like even now, I mean, the pandemic's a perfect one, gosh, this sucks.
Yeah. But you can say that on this podcast.
That's right.
I think. But don't say it again. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. But we know that Jesus is still reigning, ruling. There is hope for us. I mean, that shines as bright as ever, even if it's masked by this cloud of this pandemic. I still have that hope. There's that silver lining, because I know that there's the sun behind this cloud.
Right.
And Jesus is still active, still present. And that gives me hope.
Right. Right.
Yeah. I want to come back real quick.
Yeah.
Because you made this comment about, yes, Jesus telling us, and this is a big thing for him to say, right? You are the light of the world. And one of those comments I want to say, from earlier, Paul, that first comment about human nature, right? In this passage, he says that you were darkness.
Yeah, you were. You were not. You were in it.
Right.
You were.
Like he describes all the acts of darkness, these unfruitful works, but like literally you were darkness, but now you are light.
Right.
So like, I mean, he's talking about our nature, our sinful nature.
Right. And
like, that's hard for some people to stomach. Like some people look at Christianity or the Bible and they'll say, that's too dark. Like human nature can't be that bad, that evil, Okay. No, that our reality is without Christ, darkness, but then completely transformed. Yeah. Right.
That's interesting. I'm just thinking now too, like I've never been a non-Christian, but I wonder do you think Christian people, do you think we notice the darkness of the dark more than people who don't know the light?
I think an image that might help us would be someone being lost at sea in the currents of waves, right? Yeah. As Christians, I think we all are kind of lifeguards. Yeah. We're here. We want to seek, protect, give life to people. Yeah. And I think a lot of people are out at sea, drifted out behind that rip current. Yeah. No idea. Yeah. Yes. To answer your question in short, yes, I think I have to believe that the wisdom of God for us does expose the darkness for us.
Right. Which makes, it makes the light all that much more beautiful, and it makes the darkness all that much more ugly. Yeah. That we actually go,
like I don't want that.
I actually don't. That's actually not that good. Yes. Like I don't want that life. Like, because I know what Christ is. Like Christ already, he saved me from that. He's given me a new reality, a different kind of opportunity, a way to see the world that's so much more brighter and illumined. Yep. And why would I want that junk? It doesn't make me feel good. I know it's not helping other people. Right. Like why?
And that's, like, I think it's not hard to think of examples in your life probably when there's been a group of people who said, hey, come on, we're going to do this. And you're kind of like scratching your head a little bit, like, or you get that like inner kind of gut, like, I don't know about that, guys. Yeah. Now you might feel like, I don't know if I want to speak up. I don't want to be that guy. Yeah. There's all those things that come into the mix. But that to me is that spirit, God's wisdom revealing to you like, oh yeah, that's not actually going to make me feel good. Right. Give me life, be fulfilling. Right. But so many people kind of engage in stuff like that, maybe even mindlessly, kind of not realizing the danger they're in,
Right. So I don't know, like, what do you think is a good way? How do we as Christian people go about exposing the darkness?
So thank you, Aaron. I'm glad you asked. This aligns a little bit with that second piece from Paul, right? So he made that one bold comment about you were darkness. And the other big comment in there, I think, that sometimes goes over our heads is he says something to the effect of, when anything becomes visible, it is light. He was just talking about darkness, but he says when it comes into the light, it becomes visible.
Okay.
It is light. This is, I don't know, maybe this is my opinion, or this is how I'm hearing Paul, but I think probably one of the most convincing ways that you could expose darkness and share your faith with someone is literally to share your darkness with them. And now this is hard. This is a big, and I'm not asking, do it if you feel comfortable. I don't know. You're not gonna feel comfortable doing this after you hear it, but maybe you'll have the courage or the opportunity someday to share this. But so when I hear a story of someone being saved, we don't use saved language a lot. In our tradition, I think we talk about baptism saves, and it does.
Right.
But there's a reality to my salvation that's more repetitive than that.
Right.
Like times when God has like grasped me, maybe hooked his thumb on me because of my baptism and said, Yo, Kev, get out of here, man.
Right.
And put people in my life.
And like for me, like that lifeguard, no, I was saved.
Exactly.
I'm saved. Like I did not do that.
Exactly. And so I think our awareness of God in our life, pulling us out of these situations, become opportunities for us to help expose darkness for others. So, a person who, let's just use for an example, a person who has been seen the effects of alcoholism in his family.
Okay.
Right? He's a Christian. Maybe he saw it in his parents. Maybe he dealt with it in his own life, but had a moment, had something happen in his life where God reached in, showed him that darkness, showed him the ugliness of that, pulled him out, right? And I know, all this addiction language, it's never like, oh, it's all done and that's my past. Like you're sober, right? Each day you walk soberly. But a person comes out of that struggle and now has real life, right? They see how much of a hold that had on them. They see all the damage it was causing. Right. And now the life they're living today is so much more beautiful,
right, and
so much more healthy, and the relationships are healthier. They share that story with someone else stuck in that same problem, that same cycle. That's how darkness becomes light. You share that darkness. If our darkness is just in us, if it's just housed up in here, that's just darkness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's and that's when you start thinking, oh my gosh, I'm the only one who's this way. I'm so far from God. I don't know how I'm ever gonna get my life right. But I think when someone else comes into your sphere, gives you a place to share, and to release that darkness, maybe speaks forgiveness onto you, or even, hey, a shared struggle,
right?
It becomes light because you become stronger in your walk forward together after that. Yeah. And that to me, I think we could all probably benefit from saved language or sharing with, if you have a non-Christian friend in your life. I know I have one, and I haven't done the best job of saying, there was like several years where these are the things I was chasing. And you know what it led to? Heartache and sadness and loneliness. Yeah. And, just lay that out. Be honest about my own kind of darkness.
Right.
And then to share, but this is what changed it for me.
Right. Especially the light is given to us. The salvation is given to us. Yeah. Like, I think that, like, we can't do it on our own.
No, it's not a holier than thou talk at all, right?
And that goes back to Ephesians 2, right? We're saved by grace through faith, not according to works, so that we can't boast. Right? So as we share those stories, our boasting is in Christ and in Christ alone, not in us. We go, no. Yeah. Because here's what happened when I boasted. I was puffed up. I was filled with pride, and I got nothing out of it. But when filled with the Spirit, that's Ephesians 5 language. You're filled with the Spirit, the light of Christ enlightens your life.
Well, yeah, and Paul in that same section talks all about thanksgiving, songs, psalms. What are you doing?
Right.
You're saying, thank you.
Right.
Because I didn't do it.
Right.
I couldn't get myself out of this. Right. You saved me. You changed me.
Right.
And that's the only way I can understand, as well. All things work together for the good of those who love him.
Right.
What about all this junk? Oh, here's how. It's it was junk. Well, think about, we went through Genesis too, right?
Yeah.
So sorry, random allusion back to Genesis, totally tangential, but who was that guy? Joseph.
He's a guy in Genesis.
He was a guy. And he went through some junk.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, he says, guys, like you plotted this. You threw me in this pit. You intended it for evil. God intended it for good.
Right.
Like we all got junk that we go through. Satan intends it for evil.
Mm-hmm.
And the beauty of the gospel is that Jesus goes to a cross.
Mm-hmm.
This thing intended for evil, for destruction, for his death, flips it into our salvation.
For sure.
So.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, even Jesus kind of knows how to forgive, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, in the garden, as Judas is coming with his betrayers, remember what Jesus calls him? He calls him friend.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, like
he had him in his crew the whole time.
Yeah.
It's not like he knew it was going to happen. It's like he just wrote the guy off and said, enemy.
Yeah.
No, just love,
Friend.
love,
Right.
washes his feet.
Right.
Sit down, have this bread and wine with me. Let me tell you about what I'm doing for you.
Right. And in the dying breaths of Jesus on the cross, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing.
Right.
Right. I mean, I just think when we receive that, when that light switch is flipped on, there's nothing else to say other than, we see the darkness. We don't want it. We want to expose it to those who are living in it so that they also are like, oh man, yeah, that's junk. Mm-hmm. That's junk. It's not good. It's not good for me. It's not good for other people. It's not good for the world. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right? But the beauty of the gospel is those things. So,
amen.
Yeah. Keep shining the light, friends. I mean, as Jesus says, why would you light a lamp and hide it?
Right.
Jesus says, let you up. Right? Don't hide it. So, this has been good, Kevin.
Yeah, man.
All right.
Enjoyed it thoroughly. Hope you guys did too.
Yeah. Well, have a good rest of your day. Cheers, buddy.
Yeah, enjoy the light.
Bye.
Cheers.